everybody. Thank you for coming back. Sounds like we have a lot more information that we need to share with the creative community. Thanks for all of your feedback. My name is Jesse. I'm the CEO and co-founder with Sean of Medium. We're not really going to talk about that today. We're going to basically try to give you as much information and a baseline understanding for what's happening in the industry. If you're a creative, if you're a celebrity, YouTuber, athlete, whoever is the generating value in the current system, I'm sure you're looking into NFTs. We'll talk about that at a later date. But first, let's just look at the technology behind the whole industry of NFTs. So Medium, if you can imagine that we're trying to create that long-term value, we believe that this system is able to link a creative with their actual creation long-term. That we think that it's going to be harder to pirate. Nothing's bulletproof. But ultimately, we want to give every protection possible to the creative community and the people that are actually the authentic creators of value in the space. So we link that up through a merit-based pay system, but all of this underlying technology allows that to happen. So first and foremost, you have to understand what cryptography is. Cryptography is basically a blend between art and science of encoding and encrypting information that's really, really hard to decipher or really hard to decode in terms of hacking. And so the security applications are right now what the industry is building around. The whole reason of using cryptography is to make things in databases really safe. Okay, so that's the underlying technology, and all blockchains operate on the science that is cryptography. So a blockchain itself is essentially, think of it as a database. So you know what a server is, you know that private entities have groups of servers, they have their own databases, and it's walled off from everybody else. Well, this system is the idea that the distributed ledger, the information, is not sitting somewhere at a particular location on certain servers, but all of that information is being taken and actually pieced up and made copies and replicas of on a whole worldwide infrastructure of computers and networks. Okay, so think that you're taking that information and you're making so many copies that it's adding security, because no one hacker can pinpoint an exact vulnerability, because the whole system has the authentic information already stored on it. So that's where a distributed manner leads to this term immutability. It's an immutable ledger, right? So meaning that it can't be changed. It's being stored on all these databases. It's basically being recorded into perpetuity. Once you enter something on there, you will never get it off of the blockchain. But you can start to exchange rights to things. And so just think that it's all these unique individuals or companies or businesses that are entering information onto this distributed ledger, and that really comes up to a confusing concept in the industry. And so let's just dispel this really quick. The term trustless or trustlessness, that might sound like it's lacking trust, but really the system itself has so much trust built into it based on the actual technology of cryptography and encoding and these really safe environments and spaces. And so you don't actually have to trust the other party, right? That other party could be a stranger, but you don't need a third party to validate who that person is, because the technology already validates who these people are, right? So in this situation, you don't, the conversation goes, well, I don't know you. I want to do business with you, but I don't know you. Well, in this situation with blockchain, you don't need to know me, right? Like you trust the system. You don't have to trust me as an individual. And so that's where that term is a little bit confusing. Hope we clear that up. But just think that a blockchain is like a ledger for a house. It says when it was built, who built it, You obviously know what the codes were when it was built. You know when it's going to switch hands, when somebody buys it, sells it, pulls a permit, upgrades it. All of that information is basically sitting on a centralized ledger, down at a city hall. And so anybody, it's still public. It's still a public ledger. Anybody can go down there, and then you have new apps and things like that that actually are consolidating that into the digital environment. But just think it's public. All that information can be looked up by anybody, and so this kind of starts to build an environment where open source becomes not just a possibility, but becomes extremely valuable to the overall system. And we really believe that industry people who are in business who aren't embracing or don't have a strategy actually built out for open source and how they're actually including other people into their environments, we see that as an actual major vulnerability. If we were VCs and we saw that, like it doesn't make sense to us. We think that the world, when you get to decentralization, open source is a way of getting even better solutions, of having engaged communities to come up with fixes. And this is also what can get to another concept of self-governance. We'll talk about that in another version, but think self-governance is that if it's a decentralized community, the community itself, kind of like a co-op, can figure out how it wants to organize itself, how it wants to be making decisions on behalf of the whole community. And it really allows individuals and businesses and industries to break away from some of the relationships that they've relied on in the past. And so we really see open source as like just smart business, because ultimately it keeps you on the cutting edge, right? It allows a business to actually reduce risk and actually lower costs. And so, get speed to market and really high quality solutions. And so right now we think of if they're not operating in an open source environment, or at least an open source mentality, it means that they're literally closed-minded. They're sectioning their creative groups off from anybody else. And that's the current arrangement. And that's where, at Medium, we believe that right now only about 20% of the world's creativity is being, captured and embraced in the current model. And so if our idea is to, try to harness the 80% that corporations aren't mining from these creative talent pools, well, we've got to build something that can compete, but ultimately we have to lower, cost of ownership. If we're, really built for design and design entrepreneurs or people who are starting their own businesses, we really like this concept of standing on each other's shoulders. So, I've been in the industry for 15 years. Why wouldn't I pass on my knowledge? Why would I make kids graduating out of school nowadays have to relearn all the things that I had to learn through the industry for 15 years of my career? So we really believe in this idea of layering on knowledge and education, and really starting to proliferate ideas through open source approaches. We really believe, us at Medium, we don't think we have all the solutions. The solutions that we've built so far have been in communication with hundreds of designers trying to solve their direct problems. And so we really came up with a brand new use case for all of this technology, where we think that the industry currently is a bit misleading, if not predatory. See the prior video. So in this environment, interoperability becomes super, super important. So, okay, well, great, we want to collaborate, but how do we collaborate? If we don't know each other in the old system, is there enough trust now? So on and so forth. Well, interoperability to us just means that you're friends, you're friendly, you want to work with others, you want to collaborate. You don't think that, you're not operating in that kind of walled off mindset of a lot of the business practices of today, because you actually realize that multiple people solving a similar solution or coming at a problem from multiple angles and very diverse angles is, we believe, the way of the future. And so we want to make sure that everything is as interoperable as possible. And so, from Medium's perspective, we're technology agnostic. We work on all kinds of blockchains, and we're more interested in how we stitch all these blockchains together. And right now, we believe solutions are going to happen in the future, but there's some things that, from a creative's perspective, the industry infrastructure that we've built with our operating system and multiple blockchains actually allows us to operate in vastly different ways than somebody who's like stuck in an Ethereum environment exclusively. So in this conversation, hey, let's collaborate. Oh, cool. I like your work. Well, I'm with blank blank. Well, don't care. Because you know what, like these are people in independent businesses and operations that are coming together typically for a project, not for like seeking lifelong employment and all of those contracts based around just who's paying your bills. We believe that this technology really starts to unlock the next industry, which we think of is really blockchain as Internet 2.0. So surprise, it's here. It's also in those early stages where people were saying, well, does the internet really have value? And for a long time they didn't know how to monetize it. Well, that's what you're seeing right now happen in these industries is you're starting to see people create use cases. In Medium, we think the way that we came up with our solutions were by actually focusing on the use cases, and that led us to the technology and how we've built this system. So we've really built it from the creative's perspective rather than anybody, like a Nifty Gateway or a super rare foundation, OpenSea. They built the technology and they're trying to find use cases. And so we really think that generation one of the internet was really great for sharing content, for sharing information, for sharing files, websites, photos, all that type of stuff. But it really kind of operated in an environment where nobody knew who each other was. And so you always needed a third party to validate who these two people are, and so that then you can make an exchange, or you can get in business, or you could sell something. And so that conversation looked like, well, okay, I want to work with you, but who are you? Well, I'm me. Like, just go ask my bank, right? And so the point there is that we're asking a bank to be, the validator of the transaction. And obviously you can change out bank for a whole other host of, third parties. And so the diagram looks a little bit more like this, where each party is really trusting that third party. Well, unfortunately, from a world of security, that's creating a centralized point that can be attacked by people. It could be attacked by hackers, it could be corrupted. All these things could potentially go wrong because all of the information, all of the data is stored in one place. And so there's a firewall from anything else. Well, you can start to see how, first of all, this creates really isolated concepts of business and how you're working with each other because everybody's a threat. Well, we actually see blockchain as being that generation two, where you're not actually seeing people as a threat, you're actually seeing them as partners and potential collaborators, where you can create new types of value. And through Medium, we've built out, the digital wallets and the sites to link all of this value up and build, royalty contracts. And so because this system is so trusted and it's decentralized rather than a single point of failure, you're really eliminating the middle person. You're eliminating having to have an intermediary, which obviously takes time, money, cost, takes away value, all those things. And there's just a really thin layer of technology, right? What we talked about over here, separating those two individuals. And so there's a direct kind of peer-to-peer relationship where the technology allows that trusted exchange to happen through the system, not really even peer-to-peer. And so that's really what ends up being a distributed network, and there's no single point of attack. And so if you think from our perspective, we believe that these environments here can now start to interoperate. Now they can start to actually communicate directly to each other without having to the need and the trust of this third party. And so to us, this really unlocks the whole collaboration model into the future. And this is what we're so excited about. Hopefully in just about a month or so, you're going to start seeing and really start to feel the difference, because we're going to start unleashing our perspective on the industry, and that perspective hopefully really reflects your perspective as the creative, as the people that are creating so much value through your hard work. We want to make sure that you're the ones that actually see that pay, that your royalties and rights are being respected. And see the previous video, because that's not always the clearest in the marketplace. So let us know. Hopefully this explains a lot of kind of dense information from a designer's perspective. Let us know what else you want to cover. We appreciate your time, and take care. Share this with somebody who could benefit from it. Take care. Thanks.